Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Lucas, Managing Editor of the Knitting Circle, and I'd like to welcome you to September's live Q&A event. We use this time each month to talk about knitting and answer any of the questions about knitting that you might have. So wherever you're watching this, whether it's on Facebook, our website, YouTube, there will be a chat box. So go ahead, say hello, let us know where you're knitting from. And also, if you have any questions for us, be sure to drop them there and we will answer as many as we can during this event. Before I introduce this month's expert, I'd like to remind everybody that we do have now a free pattern page for you on the Knitting Circle. Usually every month we highlight a particular pattern for you to download, but this month we'd like to highlight our free pattern page. So you'll find a link to the free pattern page wherever you're watching it, and you can go ahead and click on it. And right now there are 15 free patterns there for you to download if you like, and we will be adding more as time goes on. So now I'd like to introduce you to this month's expert. She is an expert in both knitting and crochet. This month we are happy to have back Mary Beth Temple. Welcome, Mary Beth.
Hi, thanks for having me back. I love Stump the Band.
Yeah, I always love it when we get to chat together on these things. Um,
Absolutely.
So for maybe we have some new people here who haven't seen you on one of our live events before. So maybe you could go ahead and just introduce yourself. Maybe tell us the story of how you got into knitting and crochet as your job.
Well, I started knitting and crocheting at a very young age because my mother was multi-crafty. She knitted, she crocheted, she sewed, she did needlepoint, she built, anything that there was to do, my mother wanted to do it. So I learned to knit and crochet at a very young age. But essentially, I've had three careers. I was a wardrobe supervisor on tour and on Broadway and in film and television. And then knitting and crochet was my hobby, and sewing was my profession. And then after I had my daughter, who just turned 25, for those of you who have followed my career and used to call her Little Loopy, because back in the day we didn't say her name on social media when she was a tiny tot. She's 25 and a senior at Columbia, if you can imagine. Um, when she got to be school age, I started a business which I sold antique textiles, knitting and crocheting, vintage and antique knitting and crocheting, but also like tablecloths and bed sheets and that kind of stuff. And then after 9/11, because I'm a New Yorker, then that all went to heck. And I had written, Lord, I wrote two books. I wrote Secret Language of Knitters, which is sort of a humorous knitting dictionary, and I had written Hooked for Life: Adventures of a Crochet Zealot, which is a humorous crochet book. This came out in 2007, and I was freelance magazine writing at that time. So I started working for Yarn Market News, which is sadly no longer with us, but that was a trade magazine for people who were retailers and designers and yarn manufacturers. And through that, I got to meet a million people, and everybody said, well, I mean, you've been doing this stuff since the dawn of time. You know how to write. You should write patterns. And that was in 2008, and the rest is history. So now I still have the blog, and I still have my pattern line, which is Hooked for Life. But mostly I do video presentations now for the Knitting Circle and Creative Crochet Corner. Also, I'm a video host for Yarn Inspirations and Coats and Clark and Anchor Floss and Michaels. So
Wow.
mostly what I do these days now is video.
Yeah, that's awesome. What
So
a
it's been a long, weird road.
Yeah, a long, weird road that led you here. Well, I'm glad it led you here.
Well, thank you.
So I think before we get to some of the questions that we have, we're going to take a look at some of the projects that have been submitted to our project gallery on the Knitting Circle. And for those of you that don't know, on our website, theknittingcircle.com, there is a project gallery. And if you want, you can submit your photo. And really, it's just an opportunity to share your work with our community. And we do love highlighting some of the photos on these live events and other places on our social media. So you can go ahead and check that out. If you just browse our website, you'll find the project gallery. So the first one we wanted to take a look at is from Linda S. And here we go. We got the picture there. And Linda says it's mosaic knitting and they want to make a hoodie. They want to make this into a hoodie for my great grandson. So we picked this one, Mary Beth, because I know that you love mosaic knitting.
I do love mosaic knitting, and this is a really beautiful pattern. Um, I'm going to be an old lady and yell, "Get off of my lawn." One of the things I loved about this particularly is it is a real mosaic knitting pattern. A lot of people who are newer to the art of knitting call things mosaic knitting that aren't
Yeah.
mosaic knitting, and this really truly is. So mosaic knitting, essentially, the pattern repeats or tiles. So traditional mosaic knitting pattern will have a square or a rectangle that repeats or staggers, etc. Can be done in stockinette or in garter. Can be done with any number of yarns, any yarn weight that you want. There's not like a traditional yarn weight. I love the color element that the knitter added in there. I think that's super
Hmm.
cool. And if you want to sort of, there's a lot of mosaic knitting patterns out there, but reading the chart is different than reading a traditional chart. It really is its own thing, and it is one of my favorite things. If you want to learn mosaic knitting, I would say practice your slip stitch knitting first, because they are cousins.
Hmm.
But a lot of people call all slip stitch patterns mosaic, and that is a misnomer.
Yeah.
All mosaic patterns have slip stitches. Not all slip stitch knitting is mosaic. It's like the tissue Kleenex thing. You
Yeah,
know what I
right.
mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
All Kleenex are tissues, but not all tissues are Kleenex.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah,
So
if
I was really super excited to see this photo because I think it's really cool that she swatched ahead of time, which is smart,
hmm
because gauge is really weird with mosaic knitting because of all the slip stitching. A lot of people don't realize that when you have a lot of slip stitching like that, and slip stitching piled on slip stitching, you lose a lot of height and a little bit of width in the work. So I know there are people out there allergic to swatching, but
yeah.
swatching in mosaic knitting is really, really important. Also, it's a good idea to practice the pattern a few times so that when you're doing your actual project, if you've made an error, you can find it, because it's not the easiest thing to rip back
Yeah,
because of all the
agreed.
slip stitching. So
Yeah.
it's when you've selected your mosaic pattern, it's really good to do the swatch because you've practiced. You'll get a little more intuitive when you're knitting your project, and you'll really be able to see what's going on as you're knitting it. It'll be a lot more relaxing because you're not going to be crazy pants counting every 5 seconds.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I was really excited to see this, and I hope that you share a picture of the hooded sweatshirt when it's done, because I really
yeah.
want to see it.
Absolutely. And I did see that Linda had posted this too in our the Knitting Circle Facebook group that we have too. So yeah, I'll definitely have to keep an eye out there and see if we get a finished hoodie photo. And if you are interested in any of this mosaic knitting that we are talking about, Mary Beth actually has some really great videos here on the Knitting Circle about mosaic knitting, how to read the charts. So if you look at this picture and you think, cool, I want to try that too, we have some really great videos from Mary Beth on mosaic knitting that I think you'll enjoy. I enjoyed watching them. I felt like I learned something.
Wow, I didn't remember that I had done them. So
Yes, you did. And it'll show you how to read a chart and everything. It's perfect.
you're going, we have mosaic knitting videos. I'm like, I do.
Yes, you do.
It
um,
was a year ago. It was
yeah,
a long time ago when
yeah, it
it
was a
was so
long
far,
time
far
ago
away.
now. Yeah. Let's see. The next photo we have is from Mary C. And this is a pair of socks with a bubble pattern on it. And it looks like we have there we go, some self-striping yarn with a bubble pattern. I just thought that these were really cute, a nice way to add some just texture to a plain old sock.
Also, super smart that the texture's on the top, not the bottom, so they're comfy too.
Yes, that's always very important. Yes, don't typically you don't want to have the pattern going onto the bottom of your foot in most cases. I'm not going to say in every case, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I thought that these were really great and I don't know. Do you knit socks, Mary Beth? Do you crochet socks? Oh, we might have lost her. Well, I know that I love to knit
Uh oh,
socks and
somebody's glitching. I can't tell if it's me.
okay, yeah, I don't know. I think you might be glitching. I was asking if you like to knit or crochet a lot of socks.
I like to knit socks, and before I was a professional designer, knitting socks was my jam. That's what I
Yeah.
did all the time. I find, because I'm not known for my knit sock patterns, so I don't design a lot of them. for sale or for the blog, I find I don't knit as many socks as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
But when this was not my job, I was a super duper sock knitter. I was really truly into it. Um, I know this is going to upset some of my crocheter friends that I don't like crocheted socks. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think the fabric is. People do it in just single crochet or double crochet. The fabric that's created does not have the amount of elasticity that a knit does. I do
Mm-hmm.
have a pattern on Ravelry that I did a knit foot and a crocheted leg, which was actually kind of fun because you
Oh,
get the
neat.
elasticity of the knit foot and it's comfortable. But the crochet leg, A, it goes really fast, and B, in that particular, it's an old pattern. It's like 10
Mm-hmm.
years old. But the yarn pulled in a really interesting way in crochet that it did not
Oh, that's
in
cool.
knitting. So I again for my own wear I would do that, but I hardly get to do socks anymore. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, you guys that are watching and engaging, are you magic loop people, two at a time people, or double pointed needle people? Because I am a double pointed needle person now and forever. You
Mm-hmm.
can't make me change. But I know that a lot of sock knitters have their own personal preference and they are diehard in that technique. So I'm
Yeah.
always curious what people like to do. How about you, Jen? What do you knit socks on?
I do magic loop. Now, I'm not like diehard magic loop. If I can't find my circular needle and I want to start a pair of socks, I will knit them on double pointed needles, but my preferred method is one sock at a time on magic loop. When I knit two socks at a time on magic loop, I I knit my socks together constantly. Like I forget to drop the one yarn and pick up the other. So I constantly knit the socks together. So I'm much better off just knitting them one at a time.
Now,
Let's
do you
see.
have second sock syndrome? Do you knit one sock and then get bored and not knit the other one? Do you have 900 mismatched socks
Yeah.
with
So
one ever failing?
I used to like say on social media, "Oh, I never have second sock syndrome." Yeah, the pile of works in progress tell a different story. I absolutely do have second sock syndrome. I probably have like 5 or 6 single socks that need a match because I'm like, "Oh, I want to start a sock, but I always want to start a new sock."
Right. I don't want to do the second one. I
Right.
think that's the one advantage to two at a time.
Yeah, that is very true.
When they're
Um
done, they're done.
yeah, let's see. Both Kimberly and Sue say double pointed needles.
Yes.
Um, oh, Charlie also says double points. I knit two, and Charlie says I knit two after the heel turn on the first sock, and then start and finish the second sock. That is an interesting strategy, Charlie. I might have to try that one.
Oh, so then you go back and all you have to do is the leg.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you knit one half of the first sock, knit the whole second sock, go back, finish I
Oh,
might try that on my next pair.
I think that's really smart. I like this
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, I have done it occasionally where it's like I'll knit the cuff on one, then I'll knit the cuff on the other on like a separate magic loop, but most of the time I don't do that. I just knit the single sock. Let's see. Evelyn says I am a two at a time toe up magic loop sock knitter.
Okay.
That's good. Let's see. Barb has no idea what we're talking about. Well, Barb, we have some sock videos for you to watch on the Knitting Circle and a whole class on sock knitting coming probably in the next month or two. So, um, yeah, socks are really great. I feel like a lot of knitters, like they get to the point where you learn to knit, you learn the basics, and then most people do want to end up trying socks.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
the other thing with socks is they're super portable. When I still lived in New York City, was on the subway, on the bus, whatever, you just whip your sock out, do a couple rows. It gives you something to do, but you
Yeah.
can stick one in your pocket. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
not.
exactly. Yeah.
It's not
And
like
I,
you have a blanket or you're at the end of a shawl and it's 6 feet wide at the top.
yeah.
Socks are very very portable.
Yeah, and that's part of what I love about them too. And a lot of when people sometimes will tell me, "Oh, I can't knit. I don't have time to knit." I always think about all the times where I've had my sock in my purse and I've knit while I'm waiting in line or like I don't know, waiting for a movie to start when we used to go out to movies. So,
Yeah, I knit
like I
during
think
the
like, well,
movie
you
if
do
it's
have
bright
time to
enough.
knit. You just stuff the sock in your purse.
If it's bright enough, I will knit during the movie.
Oh yeah, I have been known to knit during a movie as well. Oh, yeah. I really love knitting socks. Let's see. Kimberly says, I have a pair that I made and it's been sitting in a bag to rip out the foot and redo the heel. I hated the heel I used, but want the sock. So here's that will lead me into this question. What do you have a particular sock heel that you like to do on your knitted socks?
I'm no. I'm a wrap and turn,
Short row.
knit one, slip one, short row, heel gusset, heel flap.
Gotcha.
But
Yeah,
again, I didn't knit socks professionally. I knit them for me.
mhm,
And again, when the kid was a teenager and would steal them,
mhm.
the thing with the heel flap is they were a little more durable. So when I
Yeah,
stole them
mhm.
back, they were still in one piece.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I use the German short row heel a lot because I do like the German short rows on my sock heel. And then also I use the Fish Lips Kiss heel, which is something you can buy on Ravelry. It's just a different type of short row heel, but I like that one too.
Mhm.
Um, I love knitting like the heel flap and heel turn and gusset. Like I think I enjoy that process probably the most, but when I wear those socks, it just seems no matter how I try to adjust my heel flap or heel turn, my socks just always kind of want to fall down. And I don't have that problem with the short row heel. So,
Well, maybe I'll have to try a short row heel on my next one. I made
yeah.
all those short row heel. I made all those short row videos for the knitting circle. I now know which ones I like
Yeah,
best.
that's true. Yeah.
I mean, how many short rows did we do? We did 4 or 5.
Yeah, I think there's 5 short row videos and then a video comparing all of the short rows. So yeah, that's something else if you're interested in short row heels. You can go check out all Mary Beth's short row videos.
That was
Uh,
really fun though, because I think as a knitter, sometimes you sort of get in the habit of doing, like, I always do the same thing. And
mhm,
so, since I put those videos together and did the comparison, I'm like, oh, no, that's really interesting. Maybe I would want to use a different short row on this shawl, or make, like, I had never done Japanese short rows before,
mhm,
but when I made the video for you guys, I'm like, if you did that in a shawl, you wouldn't even see it. It would be,
mhm.
So it was interesting to introduce myself to techniques that I was familiar with, but don't use every day,
Yeah.
to sort of broaden my own horizons. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, I feel like when I was watching your videos, because there were some of those short row techniques that I had never done before either. So I enjoyed watching them just to be like, oh, yeah, because I used to have a problem with my short rows back before I would design. Like I could just never get them to look right. And I had a whole sweater where I felt like the back of the neck had short row shaping and all I could see were my like terribly made short rows.
Right.
Like my eye went right there. So I feel like, yeah, there's so
Yeah,
many
but
different
nobody else's
options.
eye goes right
Right. I
there.
know
That's the
that's
other
the
thing I
thing.
say.
Yeah, I know. It's so
You're
true. I
not going
think
to wear that sweater out in the world and somebody's going to come and go, your short rows at the back edge, your back
I
neck
know.
shaping under your hair. Those are
Right.
terrible.
Exactly. Like I think about like when I've gone to Rhinebeck to the New York Sheep and Wool Festival and there's like thousands of knitters there wearing their sweaters. Never once have I looked at somebody's sweater close enough to be like, think that's a little I mean, of course, you're
I'm
just like, what a
going this
beautiful
year. I
sweater.
haven't been in 6 years. I'm
Oh.
going to Rhinebeck. I'm so
Oh, you
excited.
are gonna go this year?
Yeah, I'm going to go visit my
Oh,
daughter in New York, and then I'm going to go up to Rhinebeck for a few
nice.
days, and then I'll come back and go back to work.
Yeah. I haven't gone, I think I went 3 years ago was the last time I went, but I had gone like 3 years in a row before that.
Well,
So
and
I
I'd gone 10 years in a row because I used to live an hour and a half away. When I
oh
moved to
yeah.
North Carolina, then it wasn't such a priority, but I haven't been in so long. And I just went, you know what? I'm going.
Yeah, good for you. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, the New York Sheep and Wool Festival that happens every year in October in Rhinebeck, New York. Um, at least for me, I don't know for you, Mary Beth, it's one of like the coolest yarn related events you will ever go to.
It
It's
really is.
so fun.
It is so hard to convey if you haven't been there. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know this year what's going to happen with the attendance. They usually draw like 30 or 35,000 people over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get all that hipster, oh, I came here in the 90s when it was only 10,000 people. The lines were a lot short. You know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah,
I've been going forever.
yeah.
Um,
It's
But
so
it's
fun.
also cool if you like to travel with people who are not into yarn, because there's wine tastings and there's pumpkin carving exhibits and there's the Quonset hut with all the snacks and the
Mhm.
woodworkers, and there's a kids area, there are the sheep trials, there's the leaping llama contests, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
there's so
if you
much.
travel with, family or friends who are not so into knitting and they don't want to spend the whole day looking at balls of yarn, first off, they're crazy.
Mhm.
But second off, there's plenty of things for other people in your traveling party to do, which is the other reason I liked it. And it's fall in New York, the leaves are
Mhm.
changing. And you see people from all over the country that maybe you don't see at other shows.
Yeah, that's what I
Um,
think I love too, is that so many people, like the first time I went, there were so many people that I've known online for 10, 15 years. And then I
yeah,
finally got to meet them in person because we were all there. So
yeah.
it's really fun. If you are looking, to our viewers, if you are looking for an event to attend in the future, that would be one that I would recommend. It's
But book your
fun.
hotel early, because there's not enough hotels in town to
Yeah.
deal with all the crazy knitters. So I usually, well, when I lived up there, obviously I just drove up. But
Hmm.
the couple times that I've stayed, I've done an Airbnb or a bed and breakfast with half a dozen other crazy knitters, and rent a house is just so much easier.
Yeah, that's what I've done every time too with my friends, with different groups of friends. Is we always just rent a house, mostly just eat at the house. Like we'll go out a little bit here and there to eat, but mostly just like eat at home at the house we're renting, and then
Yeah.
of course eat when we're at the
It's a
festival.
relatively rural area. You guys don't let New York fool you. It's not
Yeah,
Manhattan. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So they're not, it's not a town that can really accommodate 35,000 people in a weekend just showing up.
yeah.
But definitely worth going, and look for me if you're going and say hi.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely keep up with you on social media. Please post a lot of pictures so I
Oh,
can.
you know I will.
No, I know you will. All right. Let's see. We have one more photo we were going to look at. So maybe we'll do that and then we will get to some of these questions that we have. So the next photo that we have is a hoodie and, well, it's a hat and a poncho, it looks like, submitted by Christine. And she made this for her great niece and nephew. And I picked this one out because I really thought that little detail down the center was really cool. Also, I liked that construction of the poncho as well.
Yeah, I like, so many people do the poncho with the big open neck, and it's like that's swell, but then you're cold.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so I like with the rib neckline or the cowl neckline that you can kind of scrunch, or if it's too hot, you can sort of pull it down a little bit. It gives you a little more control over your own personal temperature. Is that a cable or is that a texture stitch, do you think?
I couldn't really tell. It I couldn't decide if it was something like some sort of twisted
Yeah,
stitches in some kind of panel. Like to me, it looked like something that might have come out of like a Japanese stitch dictionary, because those have a lot of those like cool panels with twisted
yeah.
stitches, or even like the twisted stitches with like tiny little cables or something.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's really really
really
pretty.
pretty. I like the color too.
Yeah. Okay, well, before we get to the questions, why don't you tell us what you are knitting right now? Can you
Oh,
tell us what you're knitting right now?
this is the same problem I have every time I come on.
Hmm.
I'm just going to show you the stitch, and then I can't talk about it because it's not published yet.
Yeah,
But
gotcha.
I'm doing a sweater in double moss,
Oh yeah,
so
that's
um,
nice.
a little less tedious than knit one, purl one, ribbing, but not much less tedious for the
Yeah.
listeners is I can knit and talk to you guys at the same time. So this is coming out next spring, and it is a lightweight cotton yarn, and it looks a little green in my green living room, but it's a nice soft lavender.
Oh yeah,
So,
it's really pretty, and I
but
love
that's
that
all I
stitch
can say
pattern.
about that because it's not coming out for a while. What
Yeah.
I did bring one thing for show and tell. This I just put this pattern up on the blog, and it's about my favorite thing I have knit this year. I really like it. Um, so
Oh.
it's the thing with that is so it can be a keyhole scarf. So what you do is you put the end through, and then when you wear it, you can adjust it this way.
Oh yeah, that's really cool.
So the reason I like the keyhole opening on a scarf like this is alpaca. And without boring the new knitters to death, certain yarns are warmer than other yarns. Wool is warmer than acrylic, but alpaca is warmer than wool. And a lot of people do lace work in alpaca to sort of cut down the amount of heat that can happen. But
Mm-hmm.
this also, if you have an expensive yarn like a Kiviot or some kind of, this is a commercial yarn. This is Baby Alpaca DK from King Cole.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you have a really expensive yarn, you're not going to knit a 6-foot scarf out of it.
Yeah, that's
Right?
true.
You're not going to
Yeah.
buy 20 skeins of yarn that are $30 a skein.
Yeah.
So you can get a lot of mileage out of a little scarf. But again, you can adjust it. You can have it way up around your neck. If you're cold, you can loosen it up if you have to go in to get your Starbucks or whatever. But it's short on purpose because you're getting a lot of heat out of this anyway. And then you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. But the other thing I like about, let's see, this is a really interesting stitch.
Oh yeah.
It's a variation on the daisy or the marguerite stitch. It's a
Uh,
staggered daisy, staggered marguerite.
oh, that's really pretty.
I really enjoyed this stitch, and I also think it gives a lot of depth, which also I think goes well with the depth of color. Again, the yarn, it's commercial dye, but it's not a solid. It's got some other flecks of other colors in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked the depth of color in the yarn with the depth of the texture stitch. So this pattern's free on the blog,
Okay,
but
cool.
I just finished it and I really really like it, and I'm planning on wearing it to Rhinebeck unless it's 90.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be perfect.
So when you come
Perfect.
to Rhinebeck and you see me in that scarf, then you'll
Yes.
know it's me and you can say
Yes.
hello.
Say hello to Mary Beth. Okay. Well, I have some stuff that I've been knitting, so I'll show mine too. So currently, I'm just working on this hat. I'm like on a hat knitting kick. I don't know,
Oh,
but
that's pretty colors.
yeah, this is Knit Picks Felici worsted weight yarn, so it's self striping. So
Mm-hmm.
I just been really wanting to make a hat out of it, so that's what I'm working on there.
That's really cool.
Magic loop always. And then here's another hat I did. I've been making some hats for a friend's mom who is going through some cancer treatment right now. So this hat um, I made out of a cotton acrylic yarn.
I was gonna say it looks soft even just looking at it.
Yeah, I think it's the softy cotton from Bernat. So it's to me, it's perfect for that type of hat because wool can be itchy for people anyway, but especially when people lose their hair and stuff, sometimes the wool it can irritate them. So yeah, this one it's so soft. So that's what I've been working on, and this is just the hat pattern that sort of lives rent free in my head, So yeah, okay. Well, now that we've talked a lot about various knitting projects, let's go through some of these questions that we have.
I'm so happy we
Um,
have questions.
yeah, we do have some questions in here. Patty Ann wants to know about double knitting. She wants to know where she can find instructions for double knitting. Her granddaughter wants a scarf that is reversible, and that's the only way she can think of making a reversible scarf. So I guess first of all, do you have any tips for her on double knitting, or do you have any tips on making a reversible scarf that maybe isn't double knitting?
Well, I think it would depend. Is it, to me, I like double knitting for, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a silhouette or an illustration.
Yeah, like if
You know
it's
what I
like a
mean? Like,
picture of something.
yes,
Yeah.
if you're going to have, a picture of a turtle on one side and you want the same picture of the turtle on the other
Mm-hmm.
side, then that's reversible and that's something that I would do double knitting for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the flip side of that, though, is there are knitting patterns that are pretty on one side and pretty on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So again, without knowing specifically what type of project she's looking to do, I don't know if I have a real answer for that. But the other
Yeah.
thing you might look into, if reversible is all you care about, maybe a reversible cable.
Yeah, and actually, one of the free patterns that's on the free pattern website, it was designed by our friend Karina Ferguson. It's a skinny scarf, but it is a reversible cable scarf
Re-
pattern. And if you wanted to
reversible
make,
cables changed my life when I
yeah,
discovered
yeah,
reversible cables.
yeah, it's really cool. And so, even if you didn't want a skinny version, I'm sure just with a little bit of figuring out, you could make it wider with more cables. That would be um,
Right.
a great way to to have a reversible pattern, or there's stitch patterns that are reversible or look good on both sides. On the Knitting Circle website right now, we don't have any double knitting content, but on our sister site, Craftsy, there
Call me.
are yeah, there are a few classes on there.
Yeah, I think Alistair Postquin doesn't he have
Yes,
a
I
book
believe
that's on
so.
Craftsy, and he is the current guru of double knitting.
Yeah, I think Lucy Neepy might also have a class on there as well.
Oh,
Um,
Lucy, I've taken classes with Lucy. She's an amazing teacher.
yeah, I've never taken a class with her. I would love to someday.
Oh
That'd be
God, it was
cool.
it was wonderful.
Oh.
I really enjoyed it.
Let's see. Oh, we have a comment here. Ashley says, I'm going to bring this one up because I know that you know about what this particular technique. Ashley says, I made scarves for Operation Christmas Child and arm knitted them. And so she's knitting a scarf right now. I know you do like the arm knitting, don't you?
I
Or
don't know.
teaching the arm knitting, maybe.
I was gonna say, do I love the arm knitting? I do not. Did I jump on the trend and write a book that sold 100,000 copies? Yes, I did.
Good for
So,
you. Very good for you.
um, yeah, I oh God, I sound so snobby, but I'm gonna say it out loud anyway because it's been a while. What's so funny is I've written, 15 books, and there's work that I'm really proud of in some of my book and magazine work, and the best-selling book I've ever written was arm knitting.
Hey, you know.
It was translated into 10 languages.
Wow, 10. Whoa.
Yeah, I was getting copies from Estonia. I mean, it was
Awesome.
hilarious. It really was very funny because that was a situation where the publisher, I had a social relationship with the publisher, and they
Mhm.
called and they're like, "We want to put an arm knitting book out in like the next month. Why don't you come here
Oh,
and do
wow.
it?" So I literally, for those of you who want to work in publishing, this is not how it works.
No.
But I was still living in New Jersey at the time. So we made a deal with Lion Brand that it was all going to be Lion Brand yarn.
Mhm.
I then drove a little Toyota. I drove my Toyota over to the truck bay at Lion Brand. They filled it up with yarn. So I had like
Mhm.
400 skeins of yarn, literally, in the back of the car. I drove to Pennsylvania, where the publisher had a photo studio. I was doing the projects and doing the photo shoot, and I was dictating the text to an intern who was dropping it in the pagination machine, the
Wow.
machine that lays the book out. So from the day I drove to Pennsylvania, which is where the publisher was, to the day it went to the press to get the first 10,000 copies pressed, it was 17 days.
Whoa. Yeah, that's not normally how it works.
No, that is absolutely not how that
Yeah.
happens. The cool thing about there are things that you can do in arm knitting that are super cool and not a lot of people know about. I mean, I did increasing and decreasing and
Oh,
lace
man.
patterns, and like I really went to town because I'm insane.
Yeah.
But arm knitting is very cool, and I also think arm knitting is great for instant gratification.
Mhm.
I've discovered, as you know, I also own a cosplay brand. I've discovered a lot of cosplayers like arm knitting for, Jon Snow coming in out of the woods in Game of Thrones and he needs a
Oh,
big, bulky
yeah.
something. The cosplayers are starting to do some really cool things with it.
Oh, neat.
I've seen arm knit stuff like spray painted to look like bulky chainmail. I mean,
Oh.
there's stuff that you can do. Uh,
I'm always amazed at all the cool stuff people do with their knitting. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. But arm knitting's great and it's super quick.
Yeah, that is it. That is nice that it is super
And
quick.
there are times when instant gratification is the way to go.
Yes, yes, it is. Ashley also has a question, and Ashley would like to know, how do you add a stitch onto your knitting? So I think that Ashley just means like, how would you increase?
In
Do you
arm
have
knitting
I don't
or
know. It
or
just says
regular
on your
knitting?
knitting.
No, I'm asking if she was the arm knitting person.
It is the same arm knitting well, I think it's Ashley and Ashley.
All right, well, let's stand by and see if she answers.
Do you have a favorite increase for traditional like two needle knitting? Do you have a favorite way to add a stitch?
I think it depends on what you're doing. If it's
Yeah.
garter stitch, I'm going to do knit front and back. You know,
Yeah,
if
same.
it's ribbing, I might do knit front and back. Other than that, I make one. I make a lifted increase
Mhm.
9 times out of 10.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty much the same too. If I'm doing garter stitch, I'm definitely just doing knit front and back for sure.
Right, because you can't see it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Well, we're waiting to see if we get any more info on specifically the type of increasing Ashley was looking for. Let's see. I just had another question. Here we go. Deborah asks, I just knit a cowl, and when I added the new yarn, it created a hole. Is there a way to fix this?
Well, yeah, you just tighten it up when you're weaving in your
Mm-hmm.
ends, because if you've added new yarn, there's going to be an end there.
Yeah.
So
Um,
when you weave the end in, it should tighten right up.
yeah, I agree. And sometimes it depends on the project. A lot of things knitting depends on the project. But if I'm doing something like in a fingering weight yarn and I'm using all the same color and I'm just going to change to a new ball of yarn, I sometimes will knit a couple stitches with both the old yarn and the new yarn together. You know,
Absolutely. That's a
it
really
just
good tip.
yeah, and then you don't really get a hole, and I feel like it's just a little bit more secure, but it kind of depends. If I'm using a super bulky yarn, I'm
Yeah,
probably not going
no.
to do that.
Because those stitches will be the easiest bit thicker.
Yeah.
But yeah, fingering and lace weight, that's a really good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
use that one
I
a lot.
tell people that all the time when they're joining yarn. Of course, it's going to look sloppy. When you go back and weave in your ends, you just tighten up that stitch. That's why
Yeah.
it's loose, is because it's not attached to anything. You have that cut end swinging. So when you
Hmm.
put that on your yarn needle and weave the end in, you just give it enough tug that it looks the same gauge as everything else.
Yeah. And also, I don't personally do this, but I know that some people do. They will, um, when they put the new ball of yarn in, they'll tie a loose overhand knot, but then will just so like it's a little bit tighter while they're knitting it, but then undo that knot to
When
weave
they
in
weave
the
the ends
end.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really put knots in my knitting. There's like very rare instance where I would put a knot in my knitting personally. So,
I took a class one time that was again, Jen, I know you're younger than I am. I don't know. Do you remember the magic ball trend where
oh yeah, I have
everybody?
a magic ball in here somewhere. Yes.
All right. So the class was, make your own magic ball, and the thing was, wind off this many yarns, do a double overhand knot, and cut it, and then do the next one. And I was like twitching by the time I got out of the class. Like I absolutely know that was the right way to teach that class, but it made me itch because I
Yeah.
don't like knots.
Yeah. If I was making my own magic ball like that, I would put the knots in, but when I was knitting, I absolutely would cut the knots out and then weave in all the ends.
See, and I'd go for wool and just spit splice all the way.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
I'm a big fan of the spit splice.
Yeah, that does
There's
work
a
too.
nicer name for that. What is it?
Um, I don't know. I'm blanking on it right now, but there is a nicer name for. But I mean, it is that is what it is.
Felted join. That's what it
Yes,
is.
there we
It's a
go. Felted
felted
join.
splice.
Yeah,
But I grew up calling it a spit splice.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm a big fan of the spit splice.
yeah. That's all. Oh, I have a question. So, because I know you've used this yarn too. I used to do a lot of designing for done roving yarns and use
Uh huh.
that transitions yarn.
Yep.
Would you knit over where they were joined, or
I
would
did.
you you did? Did you ever have
Yeah.
I never had a problem, but then I
I
also
didn't
was
either. But they
paranoid, so
had
I always
felted
cut it.
joins too, those yarns. I have a
Pardon?
couple patterns in those yarns.
Yeah, those are nice yarns. And yeah, they said you could knit right over the join, but then I was always nervous, so I always cut
No,
it.
I knit right over it or
Oh
crochet.
yeah.
I had just a triangle shawl and knit and a triangle shawl and crochet that I had done for them. I used to design for Patternworks catalog.
Mm-hmm.
So when Patternworks would order a big bunch of yarn from a company, then they would commission designs for me that were only available in the Patternworks catalog.
Ah, gotcha.
So it'd be
Gotcha.
like, buy this yarn and get this free pattern, or buy this yarn and buy this pattern, or you can only get the pattern here. Isn't it cool? Don't you want to buy the yarn to make it? It was that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Cool.
So I had done just triangle shawls in knit and crochet, but I knit right over those.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Let's see.
But they were
Pamela.
felted joins too.
Yeah,
Those weren't
that's true. Yeah,
knots.
they were. Yeah. Pamela wants to try socks. Do you have any tips if you want to get started with socks? I would say knit a small sock first.
Yep.
Don't knit a whole sock because what if you hate it? Or in
Yep.
my case, my first sock I ever knit would not have fit any human. It was so huge.
Well, that's the other thing. A lot of people, when they recommend sock patterns to new sock knitters, will recommend toe up. So the two main the two main types of sock patterns. There's other kinds, is toe up or cuff down.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned cuff down. I know what fits me. That's what I use 9 times out of 10. But if you learn on a toe up sock, you can try it on as you go.
Mm-hmm.
So you knit the toe and you start knitting the arch, and it says go to 4 inches. You can stick your foot in there and go, well, I needed 5 inches, so I'm going to keep going, or I only needed 3.5, so I'm going to stop at 3.5.
Yeah.
And then the trick to that, though, is to write down what you do so that when you do the second sock, you do it exactly the same way. But
Yes.
if you're new to sock knitting, I would absolutely recommend a toe up sock because you can try on as you go. And then when you're done, you have something you're happy with. The other thing I recommend, I think Jen's point about a small sock is great. But I start a lot of people with Christmas stockings. If you can find a
Hmm.
Christmas stocking with the same techniques as a regular sock, they tend to be worsted or bulky.
Mm-hmm.
You only have to make one.
Yeah, that's true.
And when it's done, it's done. And it doesn't have to fit anybody. So something like that would kind of be fun too.
Yeah,
Again,
that's
I remember this from a long time. There was a felted slipper pattern going around called Fuzzy Feet.
mm-hmm.
This is again like 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in the world made Fuzzy Feet, but that was another one that I recommended because it was felted. You learned how to do the sock parts, but then
Mm-hmm.
you threw it in the washing machine and felted the wool, and then it didn't matter if it was right or
Yeah.
not. You felted it
Yeah.
until it fit somebody,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
But
Yeah,
I would definitely recommend a toe up for a first sock because you can try on as you go.
yeah, that's a great tip. And yeah, I love that tip about maybe doing something like a stocking or something like that, just so you can sort of get the technique down and only have to make one.
Yep, there you go. And thicker yarn.
Yeah, and thicker yarn
So
too.
it'll
Yep.
grow faster. You get that whole instant gratification thing.
Let's see. Let's see. Oh, Betsy wants to know the size of my acrylic cotton yarn. I believe that this was a DK weight yarn. So DK
Softy cotton?
is it?
I didn't think it was, but what do I know? I only work
I don't
there.
know where my label is. I
Now,
don't know. I
now
thought,
we're gonna have to look it up, you guys.
okay, well, you look that up. She wants to know if it was a 3 or a 4.
I think it's a 4, but I'm looking.
I
Ask
don't
another
know.
question, Jen.
Okay, well, I'll move on to another question. Deborah would like to know. Uh, she has 50 yards of bulky yarn. How do I go about figuring out what to make with that? Well, a lot of knitting patterns will list typically how many yards of something that you need. So if you are a Ravelry user, you can go on Ravelry and search for bulky yarn patterns and then search for 50 yards or less. Um, that would be the easiest way, probably.
You were right. I was wrong. It's a DK.
Oh, it's DK. DK weight. So that DK is 3, I think, right?
Yep.
3. Yep. So I think I knit mine on my hat on a size 6 needle. Let's see. Let's see.
That's it. I'm gonna get fired now from your inspirations
Because you didn't know the answer.
because I didn't know.
And my problem is I never like ever have the labels. Like the yarn label could be anywhere right now. Like you're getting this nice view of my office, but it's not the rest of it's a
Well,
disaster.
you notice we're in my living room. We're not in my office.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not showing anybody that.
Let's see. I think that is all the questions that we have. But I did have a customer service question the other day that I thought I would ask you just to get your opinion. So somebody had sent a question into the customer service on the Knitting Circle and wanted to know about a good way to store their needles and their notions. So my question for you is, how do you store that stuff?
In a bucket on the floor.
Yeah.
I was actually just thinking about this the other day, to be honest, because for those of you who missed the memo, I also sew. So I have decided that I really want to sew myself something that hangs,
Mm-hmm.
is what I would like to do. So my notions, I have one of those little clear things from the Container Store, and one is stitch markers, and one is needles, and one is stitch holders, and point tips and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it's literally yo big, and I like it because it's clear and I can see in there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not attractive because it's clear and it's messy, but I can go, oh, it's the thing that I want is right there. And then the particular one I have, I think it was meant for makeup. So it
Mhm.
has sort of a pencil cup shaped thing on the side, which I believe people put their makeup brushes in because I think it was sold as a makeup organizer.
Yeah.
But I have crochet hooks in there and it
Oh,
stands
that's
up
cool.
and they're
That's cool.
perfect. Crochet hooks fit right in there and double pointed needles. So that's what I use for that. Um, Most of my circular needles at this point are sets. Like I have a
Mhm.
Chagu interchangeable set. It came in a case. I leave it in a case. But I do have. I'm sort of reorganizing. I was inspired. Jen had her niece sort her knitting needles, and now
Yep.
I want her niece to come to my house and sort
Yeah.
my knitting needles. It's a heck of a drive, though.
Yeah,
But
that's true. Yeah.
I am finding a lot of fixed circular needles in my stash because of my video job. I'm required to use certain brands for certain clients.
Mhm.
So there was this woman, she used to go to Rhinebeck. Again, haven't seen her in 10 years. But she had them, I am having a hard time articulating this. It was a fabric background. It was
Mhm.
pretty stiff. It had sort of a strap so that you could hang the circular needles over the strap.
Oh, yeah.
Because the other problem with circular needles, if you coil them up and stick them in pockets and they sit there for a long time because you didn't need that size, when you pull them out, the coils can be obnoxious. They could be
Yeah.
so tight. And there's the whole, stick them in boiling water, yada, yada, yada. But if you're anything like me, when you're looking for a needle, you just want to knit with it. You don't want to,
Yeah.
do arts and crafts. So I'm trying to think of something that would allow the knitting needles to hang down, which would keep the coils
Oh, yeah,
out
that'd
of
be
my
cool.
cables.
Yeah.
But my sets go in the case that they came in, so that's not
Yeah.
particularly helpful on my point. How about you? Do you have stuff everywhere?
Yeah, so my 8-year-old niece did separate all of my double pointed needles
Oh,
because I do use them a lot for videos, for the knitting circle and things like that. So I sat her down with my little needle gauge and I'm like, here's how you do this, and had everything labeled, and she separated them all. So that's organized. My computer's currently sitting on my other storage solution, which is just a plastic container that has all of my circulars in it. And so I do, like, you have some sets, like interchangeable sets, and those are in, like, either the packaging they came in or some other needle holder thing that I bought at a festival or something. But then all the other circular needles that are sort of just the fixed circular needles, those are all just thrown in there, and I need my niece to organize those as well.
right. But
And then,
I am trying to think of a way that they could hang without taking up my entire wall space. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah. You do end up, especially when it is your job, you do end up with a lot of, even if it's not your job, you can end up with a lot of knitting needles. And then my notions, really, I ended up making like a little plastic box. I got it just at the craft store. I think you could put like photos or just like other like scrapbook supplies in it. I don't know. It's maybe about this big. And I've sort of now put just everything I would need in there, like, your tape measure, your needle gauge, your tapestry needles, like anything you could think of. I've just like put it into that container, and then that's what I like throw in my knitting bag and stuff. And
I'm
that's
just
my,
looking. I have one over here from the dollar store, and it has Google Eyes in it, all
oh, yeah.
separated by size. It's like a whole clear container full of Google Eyes.
Sometimes I think, like, in addition to knitters collecting needles and notions and yarn, like, I also feel like I collect a lot of like plastic storage containers for putting all my things in as well.
There's a TikTok video going around of somebody holds up a small container and went, I feel so organized. I'm going to organize my crafts room. And then the next shot is them sort of going pew and throwing it into a giant pile of yarn or
Yeah, I
whatever.
mean, if you could see what was going on over in this direction of my office, it's not pretty. Let's see, we do have one more question here. Going back to socks, Pamela would like to know, can you increase the thickness of the toe of a sock to prevent toes poking through?
There are yarns, and they're mostly European.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say Opal has one,
Mm-hmm.
but not all of the Opal brands, just some of them. There are yarns that you can get, but particularly if they are of European origin,
Mm-hmm.
that come with a almost like a crochet cotton weight thread that coordinates.
Mm-hmm.
And you are meant to knit the toe with the coordinating thread and the yarn at the same time in order to reinforce the toe. I
Okay.
wonder, I don't know the answer to this. I wonder if you could do that with crochet cotton thread. Could you
Hmm.
knit the toe with like a 10 weight crochet cotton along with your yarn? Because 10
Yeah.
weight is pretty thin. I mean, your toe would be a little thicker,
Hmm.
but that's the point too.
Right. Maybe that's, yeah, what you need.
But
Exactly.
I thought that was so cool when I was in Europe and I saw these. It would be like,
Yeah.
here's your sock yarn, and then it had a little spool that was in the same packaging. It was attached to the ball band.
Oh, that's cool. That's
And there
neat.
were some shops that just had a rack of that. Like you would go to Michael's and buy regular just sewing thread. They would have those, and they were called reinforcing threads.
Oh, yeah. That's Kimberly just commented in the comments and said, yes, there's a reinforcement thread that you can hold with the yarn. So, yeah, exactly what you're saying, too. So, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
but I wonder if crochet cotton would work.
Yeah, that would be interesting to try for sure. Well, that's all the questions we have. So, I guess before we go, do you want to remind people where they can find you on your social media and things like that?
I'm terrible at social media, so
Or your
uh,
website or your blog where they can go get
yeah,
the tools from?
Hooked for Life, HOOKEDFOR Life Publishing is the blog. There's supposed to be new blog posts every week, but sometimes there aren't. But
Mhm.
there's knitting and crocheting and sewing on there. My assistant monitors Instagram, so if you need me on Instagram, it's hooked, HOOKED, the number 4, Life, LIFE, LLC, because Hooked for Life was taken by somebody who does fishing lures.
Ah,
Um, Hooked for Life LLC, you can always reach me there because if I don't see it, my assistant will, and then
mhm.
she'll let me know that somebody's trying to talk to
Awesome.
me. So, but I do say to people, I would appreciate a follow before you ask me for help.
Yes,
uh,
yes. That's very true.
and of
Well,
course, you
oh,
can
go ahead.
always reach us through the Knitting Circle.
Yeah, that's right. You can always reach us through the Knitting Circle. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Mary Beth. It's always a lot of fun to chat with you.
Oh, it's always fun to hang out with you too, Jen. I will send you a million pictures from Rhinebeck, I
Oh,
promise.
yes, please do. And
Okay.
I just want to thank everybody for watching us today, and just wanted to quickly remind you that if you haven't done so already, be sure to go ahead and click the link to our free patterns page on the Knitting Circle website. We have lots of great patterns there, some from Mary Beth, and I'm sure that you will find one that you like. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you again next month. Bye.
Bye.